Everybody and their abuelita has recipes for birria all over the internet. Let me show you how to do it my way. This is going to be a recipe you want to keep for yourself. Come into my kitchen, let's get cooking. This is my way of making birria de res. Everybody has their own way, and there's tons of recipes on YouTube, but this is what I use, the ingredients I use, so just sit back, relax, and let me show you how it's done. It takes a lot of ingredients, and it's quite time consuming at first, but when you keep making this, you'll get used to. Let's go ahead and explain all the ingredients step by step. These are the meats I use: beef shank, beef chuck, and I also used beef cheeks. You can go ahead and use like oxtail and short rib, beef short rib. It's a little more pricey, but if you have the budget, go for it. These are the meats I choose to use because in the end, it'll taste just as good as if you were to use the expensive meats. Now for the chiles, I use ancho chile, chile guajillo, and chile de árbol. This is subjective too. If you want spicy, go ahead and use more or whatever. Guajillos, I used about 12. Pasillas, I used about 4. And the chile de árbol, I used about 4 as well. So we got vinegar, garlic, onions, orange, bay leaf, ginger, dried oregano, sesame seeds, cumin seeds, paprika, allspice, clove, canela, caldo de res, the beef bouillon, and the tomato bouillon. Also, instead of water, I like more flavor, so I went ahead and used beef broth. So let's get started. In a piece of cheesecloth, I wrapped the sliced ginger and the bay leaves, so it's easier to fish that out. For the spices, for me, I like to toast them on low heat. Toasting the spices gives it the stronger flavor, and it wakes up the oils in the dried spices. So in the pan on very low heat, I use a non-stick pan. As you can see, I crumbled the canela, the allspice, and the cloves. I'm toasting it just enough to get the oils out, Toast it maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, if that. Enough to get the scent out, let it cool aside. Same procedure for the cumin seeds. Again, on low heat. This goes fast because the spices are small and the pan's already hot. You'll see like a little bit of smoke coming through. You can take it off. That's a good sign to take it off. So remove that, you let that cool with the other spices, and you continue lastly with the sesame seeds. Again, toasting adds flavor. So in the end, if you want your birria to be nice and flavorful, try not to take too many shortcuts and do it right the first time. So on low, like I said, we're toasting all the dry spices. Takes a while. Now you see the color starting to pick up. Nice and toasty. At this point, your kitchen's smelling all nice right now. So when you see nice and golden brown like that, I'm going to go ahead and take it off the heat. Be careful not to burn your spices. That's what you don't want to do. So at this point, all the spices are nice and toasted. You want to cool them off really well. Then you can continue with the next step. Maybe about 5-10 minutes. Let them cool off. And you can combine them with the paprika and the dried oregano. We're going to grind them all in a spice grinder. I have a small spice grinder, so I had to do it in maybe 2 or 3 stages. Add a little bit of your oregano, add your paprika, and all the spices that you toasted earlier. Just like so. Again, if you don't have a spice grinder, or if you don't want to take time toasting the spices like this, you go ahead and use powdered spices if you can find it, if you want to make things easier for you. But in the end, When it's grinded like that, that's your final product. It smells really nice and aromatic. So at this point you want to set the spices aside, and we can continue with the next step, which is the chiles. You want to destem and de-seed all the chiles. Do the best you can to remove all the seeds. Heat a pan of oil on very low, and you want to cook your chilies on low heat, just barely starting to bubble. You don't want to cook them on too much of a high heat. This is a thing, you don't want to burn your chilies. You burn your chilies, it's gonna be bitter. So just take your time, do things the right way, and you go low and slow. Same with the guajillos, on low heat, just barely bubbling like so. This procedure took only about a few seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, quick and easy like that. Remember, not too much of a high heat. You don't see the chiles like sizzling. They're just barely bubbling, and that's what you want. Don't worry about the seeds, you can strain them out later. But this is a very important part in building flavor for your birria de res. Like so. So we can take them out. Lastly, you want to finish up the rest of your chiles. Pasillas, guajillos, and arbol are the 3 that I use. People have their own recipe and other chilies they like to use, so whatever you can get on hand, go ahead and use. But I find that the combination of the guajillo and the pasilla with the arbol is for me it's a good combination. I like the smokiness from the pasilla and the slight heat from the arbol and the guajillo as well. So we continue on low heat, just barely bubbling. Gotta babysit your chiles at this time. So after a couple seconds, they're done. Take them out of the oil, and you want to transfer them to a pot of hot water. From the oil, you want to go straight into the water, and you want to make sure the hot water is enough to submerge all your chiles. So you want to hydrate the chiles and soften them up so they're easier to blend when it comes time to. So you can cover your pot and set them aside for about an hour to let the chiles get all nice and plump. Now we can go back to the meat. We want to go ahead and salt it very nicely. Your beef shanks. I also used garlic salt. A note on the beef shanks. I like to use it because you see, bones will give your birria flavor, and that middle part, the marrow, is a bonus for when you use it in your tacos. So you'll see at the end what I'm talking about. So after you season all your meat with salt and pepper, you get some neutral oil. Put your stove on high, and for me, this is not traditional, but I like to brown my meat. Browning your meat also adds flavor to your end product of your birria. I see a lot of people, they just throw their meat in the pot and fill it with water, but if you do this extra step, trust me, it'll add more flavor to your birria. This method that we're using, this cooking method, is called braising. You sear your piece of meat and you submerge your meat in enough liquid, and you simmer it on low heat. Low and slow for these cheaper, tougher cuts of meat, but in the end, you'll see how soft and tender it is. Trust me on this. Again, this is not traditional. You can skip this step if you want, but for me, I like to do it correctly to have a tasty, flavorful end product. So right here on high heat, I'm browning the beef cheeks. Again, I use 3 types of meat: beef cheeks, beef shank, and beef chuck. That's the beef chuck right there. I see also in a lot of recipes, a lot of people like to use beef chuck, but as you can see, there's not much fat in there. It's relatively lean. For me, I like a good amount of fat on there too, aside from the meat. Kind of like when you're choosing steak. People like filet, but I like ribeye because that has some amount of fat in there, which is essential in cooking your meat. So, okay, back to the cooking part. After we brown all of our meat, let's go ahead and deglaze with all our beef stock. Get all the flavors off the bottom of the pot there. Again, we're building layers of flavors, and it seems like a time-consuming process, but trust me, you'll be happy at the end with the taste. So we put all of our brown meats in the big pot, and we go ahead and fill it with more liquid. In this case, I use beef broth. You can go ahead and use water, it's all up to you. But again, I like more flavors, so since we're browning pieces of beef, I choose beef broth. I used about 64 to 72 ounces of beef broth, and whatever was needed to submerge the whole thing, I used the difference with water. I didn't have enough broth, so I just filled it with water. So you dump your aromatics, your onions, garlic, and your cheesecloth with the ginger and the bay leaf. Put it in your pot. You start the pot on high. While your pot's going, you get your other ingredients ready. I got the white vinegar, and I squeezed the juice of 1 orange. Again, the orange adds sweetness and also breaks down the toughness in your meat. So I used the juice of 1 orange with the white vinegar. Careful not to get the seeds inside. Catch them with your hand, so it's easier that way. There you go. And your juice and your vinegar is ready. When your pot comes up to a boil, it's very important. You want to skim all the scum off because you don't want any of that in your finished product. So take off all the scum, add your bouillon cubes, turn it down to a simmer, add your paprika, see when it's simmering, there you go, and you add your vinegar and your orange juice. Everything goes into your pot. And finally, all the spices you've grinded, put all your spice blend all into birria. See how we're building flavors here? It's a time-consuming process, but in the end, it's all worth it. So when it comes down to a simmer, give it a quick mix, and you keep it on simmer for maybe about 1.5 to 2 hours. Remember, low and slow is the key. You don't want to have your meat at a full boil. It'll ruin the clarity of your stock. You want it nice and clear. You don't want it cloudy, and that's what's going to happen if the heat is too high. So your chilies, after 1 hour, you can take them out of the water. And what we're going to do here is we're going to blend the chiles. So you have your chile water, your dried chiles. Separate the two first, and then you also want to take some stock from your boiling meat. You want to add it to a blender. You also want to fish out all your onions and garlic that are cooking in the pot. Put it in the blender. You add some chile water and some of your dried chiles. A couple ladles. And you want to make sure it's a hot liquid, so you want to make sure if you have a blender, make sure it has the kind that you can remove the top, because you want to be careful when you're blending hot liquids, because the steam is going to come right out. So make sure you have a blender top that has a removable top like that, because if you blend it without the top open, it'll make a mess in your kitchen. So after you blend your mixture, you want to strain it well, push it through, and you continue the process. You blend up all your onions, garlic, half of your chile water, half of the stock in the pot, and the dried chiles. You blend it. I did this procedure about 2 to 3 times. That's how much chiles I had. And just if you're wondering, this is a big batch. About 10 pounds of meat I used, because of the fact that 1, I love birria. 2, I don't want to keep going out and going to restaurants to get my birria fix, and I'd rather have it in the comfort of my own home. So this is why I'm doing it my way, and I'm doing a big batch. And this is about the 5th time during quarantine I've cooked it, and every time the batch has been bigger. So when you finish straining your blended mixture, you add it back to your pot, and this is where we wait. So we bring it back to a boil and then down to a simmer, and we simmer this mixture about maybe hour and a half more. At this point, we're just waiting for the meat to get tender. The hard part's already been done. The preparation's already been done. It's just a matter of waiting till the meat is tender, like so. So good sign is the meat is just fell off the bone. The meat looks all tender and soft right now. So that took about 1.5 to 2 hours. So at this point, you can fish out the cheesecloth where your ginger and bay leaf was, because we don't need that anymore. And you see I took out all the marrow bones too, but they still had the marrow intact, so you reserve the marrow as well. Look at that. All the meat's done at this point. Look how soft it is. So we can go ahead. What I did is I went ahead and separated all the meat. Take out all your meat. You can trash up all the marrow bones too, but keep the marrow. You take out all the meat. I chopped it all up. You can leave it chunky, or it's all up to you what you want to do, but all this meat's all soft, so I just went ahead and chopped up all 3, the shank, the chuck, and the beef cheeks. It's all chopped up together, all nice. And what I did is I spooned over some consomme to add more flavor, keep it moist. Look at that. And you know, if you have like a crock pot, or if you have one of those Instapots, of course you can cook your birria time. Your birria cooking time can be cut in half or shortened generally. But this is what I had, so this is what I worked with the old school way. So here's the finished product. All the consomme that I have, and all the birria I have. I did it this way, so I'm stocked up for the winter. There you go. All the birria in trays, all the consomme in containers. I can keep in the refrigerator and freeze the rest. So there you have it. This is how I do my birria de res from start to finish. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Follow me on my food journey. Got lots more coming. Stay tuned.